Usually everything that I've done, someone's probably done before me, and I would like to be the person that sets the bar for the next one. I know every time I put a weight on my back that somebody has lifted that before. I'm not the first person. And I know that if I set the world record in it, someone's going to break it. So I better set it high.
Welcome to the Spartan Endurance Series on Spartan Up Podcast with host Johnny Waite.
Hey Spartans, Johnny Waite here, one of the hosts of the Spartan Up Podcast and particularly the host of the Spartan Up Endurance episode. We are back with Hunter McIntyre, the sheriff, the bulk pony, biceps win races, and Hunter has been there, done that. He has won world championships at Spartan Race, at Tough Mudder, at High Rocks, at all kinds of competitions. He's currently training to run a 2:30 marathon while over 200 pounds to set the world Clydesdale marathon record. And what we talked to Hunter about this time is how you dig in when you're at the end of your rope. So if you've ever been in a situation where you don't think you can go one more step, I promise you can, and Hunter's going to tell you how.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Brightside. Dealing with anxiety or depression can be paralyzing, but you should know you are not broken and you're not alone. And when you want help, Brightside is there for you. Take a free mental health assessment and get up to $100 credit on your first month of treatment at brightside.com/Spartan. That's brightside.com/Spartan.
Hey Spartans, we are back with Hunter McIntyre, and we're going to have an episode on Spartan Endurance that I'm going to call Story Time. And Hunter, I want to dive into some stories. You've been there, done that, no matter what it is. Spartan World Championships, Tough Mudder, World's Toughest Mudder. And you've hung in there through some pretty incredible moments where most people would have quit. And on Spartan Endurance, we talk about how to go harder, faster, fitter, longer. And I want to talk about times that it isn't the training, that it isn't the conditioning, it's the being willing to hang in and push through what other people would stop. And on the last episode, we were talking about your house training and HAOS. We'll come back to that later. And the idea that these same principles can be applied to the business world, to the family world, to whatever, being willing to apply yourself over an extended period of time. So tell me, if you think back over your endurance career, what's the moment that you were the closest to quitting and how you didn't quit?
2013 Spartan Race, World Championships. I was leading the thing at mile 10, and we only had like 12.8 miles in the whole course. And heat exhaustion and dehydration hit me. My dad, before the race started, said, "You have way too much water in your hydration pack. Let's pour half of this thing out. It's going to weigh you down." My dad didn't know anything about endurance sports. Didn't know how long the course was going to be. So I don't necessarily blame my dad. I blame myself for not knowing better to say no.
Sure.
But, I was in second place a quarter mile from the finish line, and I got passed like I was standing still. I was so tired. There was a sandbag carry up this little hill and then coming back down, and I couldn't even move. And I crushed the sandbag carry, the first sandbag carry, which was it was called Superstar, up the steepest lift
Yep.
ski run on the mountain. I just flew up it. This one was basically flat, walking with an even smaller sandbag, and I couldn't even move. And I was walking next to a little girl and her mother, and they were walking faster than me up the hill. And I'm a world champion, world-class athlete.
Yeah.
And I didn't quit. I could have, because I knew that I wanted to pass out. I think JJ was the guy who owns the Hawaiian franchise, and he
Yep.
was he was like, "Come on, dude, come on." He knew that I was fading out. And that was just a tear-breaking moment, but I made it through. And ever since then, there's really never been anything I've really, really thought about quitting about, because I valued it. A few years later, I did a television show called Boundless, where it was all the hardest endurance races in the world, and I was a host traveling around doing the hardest endurance races. I dropped out of like half of those races because I had no freaking clue what I was doing. I lied on my application, said that I knew everything about it. I'm on national television in the middle of nowhere in Greenland trying to cross-country ski across the Arctic Circle. I'm crying as a man, and a woman's having to zip up my jacket, and I was convinced I was going to die. But I finished that race. Yep. The rest of them, a lot of them I dropped out of because I just was in over my head. But I also didn't care. It wasn't my sport. It was an experience. But that thing with the Spartan Race World Championships, I had been living at Joe's house for the 3 months before, and I sacrificed. I broke up with my girlfriend. I broke up with all my friends. I broke up with everything in the world to become a world champion, and it meant everything to me. I would cut my wrists open, before I would quit type thing. Like, it was just like everything. Yep. So that was an incredibly challenging moment for me, and I still think about it.
And there's a body of study right now looking at fatigue resistance as an element of endurance, and the idea about how can you keep going, and when that fatigue kicks in, keep going anyway. Resist the fact, just because you're tired, slowing down. And when you're competing in a DECA, or you're competing in a high rocks, or you're competing in an OCR, even if it's not a matter of wanting to quit, there definitely comes a time where the average athlete out there dials it down a notch. You know what I mean? You just get to that point, and your body's saying, hey, you can't do this, so you dial it down a notch. The elite guys like you don't dial it down a notch. You keep going at that pace. So what do you think is it that allows you to do that?
I'll just tell you, the person that's willing to quit in a race is the person that's willing to quit in every aspect of life. You don't all of a sudden find somebody who's the CEO of a company quitting in a 5K Spartan race, unless they broke their ankle and they know that it's going to ruin everything else in their life. Otherwise, they're not going to quit. Some of my closest friends in the entire world, I've worked with them in sport, business, and life. And I know these guys so well, and some of them are my closest friends, and I would never speak poorly of them, but I could speak on behalf of them when I say that the same person that quits doesn't do well in the Spartan race, doesn't do well at work, and also doesn't do well in life, because that same attitude goes across everything. My dad, just before we went for a walk this morning, and we were both talking, and we're talking about business, and he's telling me about what he's got going on. I'm like, you could do X, Y, and Z in business to optimize this and create better income, blah, 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 blah. And my dad goes to me, he goes, you could do X, Y, and Z to your business to optimize and blah, 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 blah. And you're just not going to find two other men out here in the middle of the country walking in the hot sun talking about optimizing their business. You're just not. In the way that I was taught and I was raised, we were never designed or allowed to look at life as, we never looked at life as just one speed. We saw what was given to us, and then we saw how we could go past it and what we could do with it. We always wanted to push ourselves. That goes
back to your true baseline. Like this is just what you're given, and if that's all you ever do, you don't really deserve any credit for that, because that's what you're given, right? So that's your baseline.
It's the same kind of person that you see that will get on the conveyor belt that pushes you through the airport, or the person that goes around it and tries to walk faster than the conveyor belt to get where they're going. I see so many people get on that thing, and I'm like, what? I mean, listen, I hate to talk badly, but I say, what the f*** are you doing? I'm like, get off the belt and get going. Like, you may have some time to kill, but what are you doing on these belts? I can't believe that society has actually created belts to help us become lazier. I mean, I can understand
scooters and everything else.
I don't take the escalator. I just don't.
But that brings up an interesting point, because there are people out there who didn't have the same environment growing up. They didn't have the same role models and things like that, and they've lived that life, and yet they're now making a change and embracing a fitter, healthier lifestyle. And those are the ones that really fascinate me, because there are people who, they grew up fit and motivated and everything else. And, I take someone like yourself who is not taking that for granted. You're saying, and I'm going to do something unbelievable with that, as opposed to most people who are just fit and active and stay fit and active, and that's that. But, that other person, that one who, they're 35 years old and they come out and they do a race and they see you, they see, these other athletes, and they go, I want to be more like that. And 2 years later, they come back and they've lost 50, 60 pounds and they're going faster. So those athletes, the ones who used to be on the treadmill and now they're not, the conveyor belt, and now they're not. What do you say to that athlete in terms of how they can keep that momentum?
You got to read. You have to read, and you also have to put yourself in the room with people that are challenging themselves at a higher level than you are. Like, you can't be at the shallow end of the pool. Like, you need to get on the deep end.
Yep.
I don't specifically train with people that are weaker than me. When I go to a weightlifting session, I invite my friends over that lift more than me. When I go do
Yep.
a running session, I go train with a marathon runner who's running 220s, and I'm barely capable of running a 230. That's my goal. Now,
Yep.
you always have to get closer to that intensity and that heat of that sun. You can't sit in the shade.
Yep.
You need to get out there. You need to get that exposure.
So
And
the good news for the person who isn't an elite athlete yet is
yeah,
that it's not hard for them to find somebody who's already ahead of them. So you're
no,
not saying that that
no,
person has to find a
no.
220 marathoner, but you're saying that person has to find somebody who's further down the road than they are.
I guarantee anybody who's listening to this could go sign up for a local CrossFit and get their ass kicked. And that's probably the best thing for
Yep.
them. And then eventually
Yep.
you're going to outwork everybody in that room. And then it's time for you to go sign up for a Spartan race, a Decafit, a High Rocks, a marathon, CrossFit Games, whatever, and go. And then you need to get
Yep.
out of that circle and go beyond that.
Yeah, isn't it funny how willingly going and getting your ass kicked seems so counterintuitive to most people? It's the last thing they want to do. And then once you've got your ass kicked and you've started to develop some skill, to keep putting yourself in positions where you're not the fastest, the strongest.
I'll
I
give you an
understand it, but it
example.
is counterintuitive. Where so many people they see it differently. They don't understand that setting the ego aside and not having to be the fastest and the best because you can get faster and better by being around people who are better than you.
But that's just because society's made it okay today to just be weak or undercapable of what you're truly asked of. Today, when we went on this walk, my dad said, "Hey, when you go back to get in the pool today, be careful because my goggles that I usually wear, there's a baby's bird's nest in there now, and just make sure you don't knock that over because I don't want them to be hurt." So we walk around the corner, and all of a sudden we see all the eggs all over the ground, and they've clearly been knocked out, and something ate them last night. And in reality, like that's the nature world. You're always the opportunity for you to get knocked on your ass and get eaten alive is always out there. So you always have to be prepared. Whereas you and I are probably both sitting in rooms right now filled with air conditioning, and we probably have refrigerators full of cold and sweet sugary food, and we
Yep.
probably have a nice flat screen TV to watch our Amazon, Netflix shows on and everything. So you and I have a million opportunities for us to make our lives easier, less
Yep.
challenging, less less reason to want why would I work out? Like I could just go to the doctor and just get a shot, or they could give me diabetes medication, or they could help put a tube around my stomach so I don't eat when I eat too much, it will be harder for me to eat more because I'm too fat and I can't control myself. And I hate to be honest, but it's just the reality. The whole world at least in our environment has been shaped in a way that you can get away with doing absolutely nothing in this life and coast
Yep.
by.
And yet the life is still going to pass either way, right? We have that opportunity, or we have the opportunity to dive in and challenge ourselves. And
Oh
again,
yeah,
I keep
and
coming
that's why
back to
we're
that
talking on this
person. I keep
podcast.
coming back to that person who may have been on that other path up until now, and they're making that shift over, and they're seeing, hey, I don't have to be this person. And that's where I think the value in hearing people like you and hearing intense motivated people who like you say will just call it out and say, hey, absolutely you could sit in the air conditioning, and absolutely you could have that tub of ice cream, or you could go out in the hot sun and walk a mile around the block and come back exhausted, and you'll be farther ahead.
Yeah. I mean, listening to this podcast is probably the first step. It's the best step. All day long, I'm listening to books on tape or podcasts or reading regular books or having conversation with people that challenge me so that I'm always bucked up, ready to go. And you need
Yep.
things like this to keep you going. And as soon as you start settling and you reach a level of contempt with the current podcast, book, or environment that you're in, you need to shift. You need to stir the pot. You need to get up again and get to another level, climb another rung up the ladder, and challenge yourself. That's just life.
and that comes and that comes back to what we are talking about at the very start, the idea that um, there's always a moment where you could say enough. You know what? I'm done. I'm not doing any more. And what you're saying is not only do you keep doing more, but as soon as you get to the point that this isn't challenging you as much anymore, find that next level. And so when you're working out, or when you're competing, um, and you've set that you're going to do 10 and you're on 6 and you just don't think you can do it, How do you get 7, 8, 9, 10 done?
Because someone's done it before me. Usually everything that I've done, someone's probably done before me, and I would like to be the person that sets the bar for the next one. I know every time I
Okay,
put a weight on my back that somebody has lifted that before. I'm not the first person.
Yep.
And I know that someone, if I set the world record in it, someone's going to break it. So I better set it high.
Yep. Yep.
That's it. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah, and I like the idea that that's still scalable for mortals. You know, like if you're 315 pounds and you're doing your first half marathon, and you get halfway through and you think, I can't do this. I promise you, somebody 317 pounds has done that half marathon before. And so I love what you say, that anything you think you can't do, someone else has done. They really have done it. And if you can just put in the work and then show up and be willing to make it matter enough to finish it, you're going to get there. And then the great thing is, this is one of Joe's lines, then you have a new place to stand, right? You've now achieved that thing. So that's now your platform that you set your next goals from.
Yeah.
As he finishes his Budweiser.
It was a good one.
Outstanding. That's good. That's great. Hey, man, I want you to tell me again, at the end of the last episode, you told people where they can find out more about your training. And so first of all, tell me about your training program, and then repeat for me how people can find out about you and find out about your plans.
So Hunter's Academy of Strength is a training company where we have 3 pillars, which is strength, endurance, and mindset. And I think we've covered, a deep part of the mindset piece on this podcast. And we have 4 daily programs where you can do training guides, or you can do one-on-one stuff with us, consulting. And the whole goal is just to be able to teach all these athletes the exact conversations that we're having right now. So many people, like myself, I've spent tens of thousands of dollars, if not more than that, on getting the best coaches in the world, reading all the books, getting all of the certifications, because I think knowledge is power. And having the opportunity to work with people that have done it before and will do it again and bring the best product to you possible, I think is an incredible opportunity, even if you do it for a limited chunk of time. So house training, you can find housetraining.com, huntermcintyre.com, house training on Gmail or Instagram. You can find us. So reach out. We'd love to connect with you, whether it's just.
And just to remind them, house is HAOS.
HAOS, Hunter's Academy of Strength.
Yeah. Fantastic. Hey, man, you inspire the heck out of me. First time I met you was in Mexico. At the time, Hobie Call was the reigning Spartan king, and he was going to go down and race that race. And Joe put a $10,000 bounty on his head, said anyone racing Mexico who could beat Hobie would win $10,000. And I remember, for various reasons, Hobie couldn't go, and at the last minute, Joe sent the new stud Hunter. And you were not an old man. You were 24 years old, I think, and showed up with the same $10,000 bounty on your head. And that was the first time I met you. And I remember thinking, that's a lot of pressure. And you went out and you did it. You won the race and saved Joe's $10,000. And I'm sure you've taken more than that from him since in prize money. So well done.
Well, at the time, I didn't have anything to my name, so he couldn't come after me and ask for it from me. So there was that little risk on my end, and it was a cool experience. A guy who was just starting in the sport, getting a flight to Mexico. I was very, very happy.
Well, man, what you've done with it since is phenomenal. I love your goals. I love the mission. It's fun following you. And I encourage everyone who's listening to this to follow you on Instagram. It is as entertaining as it is inspiring, and as inspiring as it is entertaining. Thanks a lot, brother. So everyone, house training, HAOS training.com, huntermcintyre.com. And yeah, thanks for being here, buddy.
Appreciate it, Johnny. I'll talk to you soon.
You rock, man. Ciao.
This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Brightside. Dealing with anxiety or depression can be paralyzing, but you should know you are not broken and you're not alone. And when you want help, Brightside is there for you. Take a free mental health assessment and get up to $100 credit on your first month of treatment at brightside.com/Spartan. That's brightside.com/Spartan. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Endurance Series on Spartan Up Podcast. Spartan Up is your partner in resilience for mind, body, and spirit. We're here 3 days every week. Tuesdays, you can find Joe DeSena, founder and CEO of Spartan, interviewing biohackers, business leaders, authors, and athletes. Thursdays and Saturdays, catch episodes from our DECA, Endurance, Trail, Combat, and La Ruta series. Do you know someone who needs a little nudge? Maybe they could use some motivation, tactics to be stronger, healthier, happier, more successful. Tell them about our show. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. We want to know who's watching and who's listening. Thanks. See you next time.